What if we told you that the world as we know it is changing, not in decades or centuries, but right now? That's right, our planet is undergoing a transformation, and it's not the kind that comes with time naturally. We're talking about climate change, a global phenomenon that's been picking up speed over the past few decades. Now, you might be thinking, isn't there a lot of controversy around climate change? There are certainly debates and discussions, but let's clear the air. The overwhelming majority of scientists worldwide agree. Our climate is changing, and it's because of us, humans. From burning fossil fuels to deforestation, we've significantly altered the Earth's natural processes. The evidence supporting this is irrefutable. Rising temperatures, melting ice caps, intensifying weather patterns. These are not coincidences or anomalies. They are direct consequences of human-induced climate change. We're seeing it in real time, not in some distant future. Some argue that climate change is a natural cycle, a part of Earth's history. Yes, our planet has seen climate shifts before, but never at this speed. The rate of change we're witnessing now is unprecedented, faster than any known natural pace, and that's what makes it so alarming. The impact of climate change isn't restricted to one region or one group of people. It's a global issue that transcends borders and boundaries, affecting us all, from the polar bears in the Arctic to the coral reefs in our oceans, from the farmers in the Midwest to the city dwellers in the metropolises. The reality of climate change is not something we can ignore or wish away. It's happening, and it's happening now. The question isn't whether climate change is real. The question isn't even whether humans are causing it. We've moved past those debates. The question is not whether climate change is happening, but how fast it's happening and what we can do about it. Let's dive deeper into this reality, peel back the layers, understand its implications, and most importantly, explore what we can do to slow it down. Because the time to act is now. Climate change is not a distant threat. It's a global phenomenon affecting every corner of our planet. Let's take a moment to visualize our planet as a living, breathing entity. Each region, each ecosystem plays a unique role, much like the organs in our body. But just as our body reacts differently to stressors, so too does our planet respond in diverse ways to the pressures of climate change. In the frosty Arctic, climate change is like a fever, causing the ice to melt at an astonishing rate. This ice, which has been a permanent fixture for thousands of years, is now dwindling, disrupting the balance of the ecosystem. Imagine, in the span of a single human lifetime, landscapes that have remained unchanged for millennia are being transformed. The inhabitants of this region, both human and animal, are being forced to adapt to these dramatic changes or face the risk of extinction. On the other side of the globe, in the warm Pacific Islands, climate change manifests as rising sea levels. These islands, a paradise on Earth, are gradually being swallowed by the ocean. The steady encroachment of the sea is not only a threat to the unique biodiversity of these islands, but also to the very existence of the communities that call these islands home. From the frozen tundras of the Arctic to the tropical paradises of the Pacific, climate change is reshaping our world in ways that we could not have envisaged a few decades ago. And these are just two examples. There's not a single region on our planet that remains untouched by the effects of climate change. Deserts are expanding, forests are burning, glaciers are retreating, and storms are becoming more violent. The effects of climate change are as diverse as the regions it affects. But there's one common thread that ties all these disparate impacts together. They're all happening right now. Climate change is not some abstract concept that we can put off dealing with until tomorrow. It's a reality that we're living with today. No matter where we live, climate change affects us all. Imagine your home slowly disappearing beneath your feet. This is the reality for the Arctic inhabitants. The Arctic, a frosty fortress of ice and snow, stands as a chilling testament to the impact of climate change. As temperatures around the globe rise, the Arctic is feeling the heat twice as much. This icy wonderland, once thought impervious to the warmth, is now experiencing an unprecedented meltdown. The ice, a pivotal player in this polar paradise, is dwindling at an alarming rate. Scientists estimate that by mid-century, we could see ice-free summers in the Arctic. This melting ice isn't just water turning into a liquid, it's a habitat disappearing. It's a way of life evaporating for the countless species that call this ice home. The Arctic is not just an expanse of lifeless ice, it's a bustling ecosystem. Polar bears, the undisputed monarchs of the Arctic, are losing their frosty throne. With the ice shrinking, these magnificent creatures are finding it harder to hunt seals, their primary food source. The dwindling ice also means female bears find it difficult to find safe dens to give birth and raise their cubs. But it's not just about the polar bears. Walruses, Arctic foxes, and countless other species are also feeling the heat. As the ice retreats, they're losing their homes, their hunting grounds, and their very existence hangs in balance. And it's not just the wildlife. Indigenous communities who have thrived in these icy landscapes for thousands of years are finding their way of life threatened. Hunting and fishing, integral to their survival and cultural identity, are becoming increasingly challenging with the changing landscape and disappearing wildlife. Climate change isn't just warming up the Arctic, it's fundamentally altering it. It's turning this icy wilderness into a watery wasteland. The melting ice is also contributing to rising sea levels, threatening coastal communities thousands of miles away. The Arctic is warming twice as fast as the rest of the world, and it's a stark warning of what's to come. Climate change isn't a distant, future threat. It's here, it's now, and it's melting away our Arctic. While the Arctic is losing its ice, the Pacific Islands are losing their land. This is not a science fiction plot, but a harsh reality that is unfolding right before our eyes. The rising sea levels are an undeniable threat to the Pacific Islands, and the consequences are far-reaching. Imagine living on a beautiful tropical island, your home surrounded by lush vegetation and the calming hum of the ocean. Now, picture the same island, but with the sea level inching closer each day, threatening to engulf your land, your home, your sanctuary. This is not a distant possibility, but a reality for many Pacific Islanders. The rising sea levels are causing coastal erosion, washing away the sandy shores and even entire chunks of islands. This erosion is not just an aesthetic issue, it's a matter of survival. For the islanders, the land is not just their home, it's their source of food, their economy, their identity. As the sea claims more and more of their land, their very existence is under threat. But the rising sea levels don't just pose a threat to the land. They're also seeping into freshwater sources, causing saltwater intrusion. This intrusion not only contaminates drinking water, but also affects agricultural lands, making them less fertile, less productive. This means fewer crops, less food, and an increased risk of food insecurity for the islanders. The homes and livelihoods of the Pacific Islanders are at stake. The rising sea levels are not just a natural disaster waiting to happen, they're a human catastrophe already in progress. The islands are sinking, and with them, a whole way of life is slowly disappearing. But let's not forget, the crisis facing the Pacific Islands is not isolated. It's a stark preview of what awaits the rest of the world if we don't address climate change. The Pacific Islands may be the first to face the full impact of climate change, but they won't be the last. Our actions today will determine the fate of these islands and ultimately our shared future. From floods to fires, Australia is on the front line of climate change. This continent, known for its rugged outback and diverse ecosystems, is facing an increasingly harsh reality. Climate change is not a distant threat for Australia, it is happening here and now. In recent years, Australia has been grappling with more frequent and severe droughts. These are not your garden variety dry spells. These are parched landscapes where rivers run dry and dust storms blot out the sun. The impact on agriculture is profound. Farmers are struggling to grow crops and raise livestock in such arid conditions. The scarcity of water is not just affecting farms, but also cities and towns, where water restrictions have become a part of daily life. Then there are the bushfires. Every summer, Australia braces itself for the bushfire season, but the fires have been growing in intensity and duration. Imagine walls of flame that stretch as far as the eye can see, swallowing up everything in their path. These bushfires not only destroy homes and infrastructure, but also devastate wildlife habitats. Countless animals, many of them unique to Australia, lose their lives or their homes to these fires. Heat waves, too, have become more intense and longer lasting. The relentless heat poses a serious threat to human health, particularly for the elderly and those with chronic illnesses. Heat stress can lead to a range of health issues, from dehydration to heat stroke, which can be fatal. Australia's unique biodiversity is also under threat. The Great Barrier Reef, a World Heritage Site and one of the 7 natural wonders of the world, is suffering from coral bleaching due to warmer ocean temperatures. This not only threatens the reef's diverse marine life, but also affects the millions of people who depend on it for their livelihood. Australia's climate has always been tough, but climate change is making it tougher. The land down under is a stark reminder of the urgent need to address climate change. The time to act is now, for Australia and for the rest of the world. Climate change is a global problem, but it also requires individual action. When we think of climate change, we often picture massive industries billowing out smoke or vast deforestation. While these are significant contributors, it's crucial to remember that individual actions and choices can make a significant impact. Small changes in our daily routines can help reduce our carbon footprint. This can be as simple as taking public transportation, reducing energy consumption at home, or even choosing to consume less meat. But it's not just about reducing emissions. We can also adapt to the changes that are already happening. For instance, we can plant native species in our gardens that are more resilient to changing weather patterns. We can also build our homes to be more energy efficient, or even install renewable energy systems like solar panels. Communities, too, play a vital role. By working together, we can create local solutions that are tailored to our unique circumstances. Communities can organize carpooling systems, start local recycling programs, or even invest in community-owned renewable energy projects. Now, let's talk about the role of governments. Governments have the power to implement policies that can significantly reduce greenhouse gas emissions. They can invest in renewable energy, enforce stricter emission standards, and even incentivize businesses to become more sustainable. Government actions can also help us adapt to climate change. They can fund research into more resilient crops, build infrastructure to protect against sea level rise, or even create plans to manage water resources during droughts. However, for these government actions to take place, they need public support. That's where we come in. By voting for politicians who prioritize climate action, we can ensure that our governments are making the right decisions. We can also support climate-friendly policies in other ways, such as participating in public consultations or even joining climate marches. But remember, tackling climate change is not just about mitigating its impacts. It's also about creating a future that is healthier and more sustainable. By reducing our emissions, we can improve air quality and reduce health risks. By adapting to climate change, we can create more resilient communities that are better prepared for the future. And by supporting climate-friendly policies, we can ensure that our governments are investing in a sustainable future. So, let's not feel overwhelmed by the enormity of climate change. Instead, let's recognize the power of our individual and collective actions. Whether it's making a small change in our daily routines, supporting our local community, or voting for climate action, every step counts. Climate change might be a global problem, but it's also a problem that we can tackle together. From the smallest individual actions to the largest government policies, every effort makes a difference. Together, we can slow down climate change and create a healthier, more sustainable future. We've explored the reality of climate change, and it's clear that the time to act is now. We've taken a journey through the impacts of climate change across the globe, from the melting ice in the Arctic to the rising sea levels in the Pacific and the devastating droughts and bushfires in Australia. Each of these phenomena are not isolated incidents, but interconnected pieces of a larger puzzle that paints a disconcerting picture of our planet's future. The Arctic meltdown is not just about the loss of a beautiful icy wilderness. It's about an ecosystem thrown out of balance, the extinction of species that rely on the ice, and a chain of events that could plunge our world into uncharted territory. Meanwhile, in the Pacific, rising sea levels are not just about losing a few coastal areas. It's about entire cultures and communities being wiped out, about millions of people becoming climate refugees, and about the loss of biodiversity that could have untold consequences on our food chain and health. In Australia, droughts and bushfires aren't just about a few hot days or weeks. They're about losing homes, lives, and livelihoods. They're about the destruction of unique wildlife and habitats, and about a continent that may become uninhabitable if we don't take action. The urgency of climate change is not something we can ignore. It's not a problem for future generations to solve. It's here, it's now, and it demands our immediate attention and action. We cannot simply be bystanders in this unfolding catastrophe. We must be the change we wish to see. As individuals, communities, countries, and as a global society, we need to rethink our relationship with the environment. We need to reduce our carbon footprint, adopt sustainable practices, and work towards a future where our planet can thrive. Every one of us has a role to play in combating climate change. Let's not wait until it's too late.